American Comics, My Warhammer Simulator Chapter 1 to 10. Solar System, Earth, North America, United States. Chinatown, New York. At 9 o'clock in the morning, on the sofa of an old apartment, Rorschach had a solemn expression. His true identity was a time traveler, a foreigner. If it weren't for the explosive news on TV that Stark Industries closed its weapons department, Rorschach would have thought he had come to a parallel world. Rorschach is just a movie lover and a comic book cloud reader. The characters and plots that are familiar to fans of superhero movies. For him, it is just a vague memory. Rorschach tried his best to recall, but could only remember a few important nodes in the plot. For example, the Battle of New York with thousands of casualties. And the rise and fall of Ultron with unknown casualties. And the final battle in which Thanos killed half of the universe's population with a snap of his fingers. As his thoughts turned, Rorschach couldn't help but shudder. After all, watching superhero movies is a pastime. Experiencing it in person is another matter. Not to mention, the Rorschach who traveled through time and space only merged the memories of an ordinary teenager with the same name and surname, whose parents died. He has no money, no power, and no superpowers. Now, Rorschach can only choose to live in the home of his guardian aunt. He helps out in his aunt's Chinese restaurant in his free time every day, and collects a little tip from customers, trying to save up tuition for college. Rorschach is not without the idea of running away. As long as he maxes out his aunt's credit card and saves tuition, a plane ticket to the Asian continent is more than enough. Maybe, Rorschach will have a chance to meet the Ancient One of Kamar Taj and become a magic apprentice. Even if his identity as a traveler is accidentally discovered and he is invited to drink tea by the SHIE Bureau. It is much better than becoming a statistic in the Battle of New York. However, Rorschach, who has merged the memory of Rorschach for the aunt who took care of him since he was a child, the emotional connection between blood and water cannot be cut off. Moreover, the rashly changed living environment and the stubborn emotions unique to middle-aged people. It was not something that a young man like Rorschach could handle. So, Rorschach, who was quick-witted, could only advance part of the tuition and rent the basement of the old apartment. He borrowed tools from his neighbors and repeatedly reinforced it with steel and wooden boards. And stored a lot of food and fresh water. At the same time, Rorschach also hoped that when the New York War broke out, he and his aunt would still be at home and everything would be safe and sound. The wall clock in the apartment turned, and the time was 9:30. Rorschach got up and planned to go out and start the regular routine of the day. In the morning, it was part of the last year of high school. In the afternoon, he needed to help his aunt run the Chinese restaurant business. In the evening, Rorschach had to continue to reinforce the basement. The borrowed tools also needed to be returned as soon as possible, and time was quite tight. At this moment, a series of garbled letters suddenly flashed before Rorschach's eyes, like an illusion. Open black lens bracket Warhammer 40K, life simulator starting, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Do you want to start the first simulation? Close black lens bracket. Warhammer 40K. This is not a tabletop battle flag game. Is it a future science fiction IP built together with cultural creations such as novels, comics, games, animations, etc.? Rorschach frowned slightly, very confused. In his previous life, he was just a Warhammer cloud kid. The main channel for learning about Warhammer is the video website Bilibili. A series of high-quality videos of Warhammer stories produced by host Colonel Dutch. After entering the pit, he occasionally read some detailed articles on famous battles and the background stories of some characters. Rorschach is still clear about the basic storylines and the general composition of various races in the Warhammer universe. But let him tell in detail what battles happened on a certain planet. Or who is the mastermind behind a certain incident, etc. Rorschach can only say that he is blind. However, for Rorschach, why is the gold finger of the time traveler related to the Warhammer universe? That is a dark, ignorant, desperate universe full of demons and snakes. Chaos is rampant, the Empire is corrupt, and the alien civilization is eyeing it covetously. Any hope is just a tiny spark that can delay the destruction of the entire universe. If all travelers are given a choice, I'm afraid only mentally confused masochists will choose the Warhammer universe. Moreover, even after the masochists come, will they cry like a fart whose toes have been stepped on? At this moment, Rorschach was confused. But this did not prevent him from worrying about his life safety. In order to live a better life, he has to gamble with his golden finger. Open black lens bracket simulation starting, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You have come to the Warhammer universe. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Time, unknown. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Location, Milky Way. Unknown star field. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The moment you stepped on the surface of the planet, the subspace vibrated unknownly, and the eyes of the four gods of chaos fell on you. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You hold your head with both hands and kneel down to wail. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. XXXXXX appears in your mind, shielded. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Your skull exploded. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You are dead. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This simulation ends in 15 seconds. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This simulation failed to retain any options. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This simulation time is less than 24 hours. Simulator loss has been exempted. Close black lens bracket. This is dead. Rorschach blinked, looking bewildered. He seemed to have not yet recovered from the fleeting death. Even if this is the universe of Warhammer 40k, the difficulty of survival is too great, right? The four chaos gods. Rorschach stared at the text on the simulator and suddenly understood everything. I know too much about the warp. The four chaos gods, also known as the warp evil gods. During the outbreak of the heavenly war between the Necrontyr and the Ancients, they were born in the warp because of the negative emotions of countless intelligent life in the universe. So far, chaos is immortal and the four chaos gods are immortal. The more chaotic the Warhammer universe is, the more powerful the four chaos gods will be. And the more powerful the four chaos gods are, the more chaotic the Warhammer universe will be. For 40,000 years, there is no hope, only war. Can I block my memory? Rorschach tentatively asked the simulator. Unfortunately, the simulator is just a tool, not a system that works all the time. I just don't believe this evil. Rorschach's stubborn temper came up. He didn't plan to go to class, so he sat back on the sofa. Open black lens bracket simulation starting, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You have arrived in the Warhammer universe. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Time, unknown. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Location, Milky Way. Unknown star field. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The moment you stepped onto the surface of the planet, you began to pray desperately to the Emperor. The warp shook again, and the eyes of the four gods fell on you again. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Your prayers to the Emperor seemed to have no effect. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You held your head with both hands and knelt on the ground wailing. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You were on the verge of death, and in a trance, you seemed to see a cold sun shining on your soul. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Your skull exploded. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You are dead. Close black lens bracket. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. This simulation ends and takes 1 minute. Google search reading close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The options available for this simulation are as follows. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. 1. The Emperor's gaze, human affinity. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. 2. None. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. 3. None. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The simulation time is less than 24 hours, and the simulator loss has been waived. Close black lens bracket. The second simulation ended quickly. Like a shooting star, fleeting. Well, at least I survived for a few dozen seconds longer. Rorschach's chest burned with the desire to complain. Then, his eyes fell on the only reward available in the simulator. The Emperor's gaze, human affinity, you will be protected by the Emperor, and the favorability of most humans towards you will increase, while the favorability of Chaos and Xenos will decrease. Rorschach blinked and chose the reward. His prayer to the Emperor was just a bold attempt. Unexpectedly, it actually attracted the other party's attention. The Emperor, the founder of the human empire in the Warhammer universe. Those who loved him called him God Emperor, Lord of Mankind, Messiah. The monsters who hated him cursed him as the Corpse Emperor, the False Emperor, the Bacon who played with witchcraft. The Emperor does not love any individual human being, he loves all of humanity. I hope the next simulation will not attract the four gods of chaos, right? The Emperor's blessing. Rorschach swallowed subconsciously. He was a bit more concerned about skull explosion and headshot death. At this time, Rorschach seemed to have forgotten the troubles in reality. Like an internet-addicted teenager, he couldn't wait to start the next simulation. Open black lens bracket simulation is starting, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You have arrived in the Warhammer universe, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Time, unknown, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Location, Extreme Starfield, Catachan Galaxy, Catachan, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You stepped onto the surface of the planet, and you were surprised to find that in front of you was a small stronghold belonging to humans. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You have no time to rejoice, you are already surrounded by countless deadly animals and plants. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You survived by chance and did not die. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You were rescued back to the stronghold by a Catachan human who was out hunting. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You expressed your loyalty to the Emperor, and you survived temporarily. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You find that there is only one Catachan human in the small stronghold. He is a Catachan recruit and is undergoing intensive training on survival in the wild. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You try to learn combat and survival skills from the other party. Although the other party is silent, you still see some appreciation in his eyes. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. In the first week, you followed the Catachan recruits for very extreme physical training. You began to urinate blood frequently, and you didn't even want to move a finger after lying down. Close black lens bracket. In the second week, Catachan recruits will teach you popular science knowledge about the deadly native animals and plants. From shapes, colors to habits and characteristics, if you cannot remember any of them, you will be forced to learn Catachan combat training, and your teeth will seem to fall out. After a few pills, you feel like life is worse than death. Open black lens bracket. In the third week, you followed the Catachan recruits for basic firearms training, and your shooting results were good. You were recognized by the Catachan recruits. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You accidentally discovered that the injuries caused by the extreme physical training in the past 2 weeks have actually healed. You think it is due to the cans of ant bull collected by the Catachan recruits. The taciturn Catachan recruits fell into deep thought. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. In the fourth week, your survivability has greatly increased and you asked the Catachan recruits to take you for a real wilderness survival training, but the Catachan recruits chose to refuse. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You stubbornly believe that this is the contempt of the Catachan recruits, so you choose to go out alone and bravely challenge the jungle of Catachan. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You cleverly avoided the lobe parasite. In the bushes not far behind you, the Catachan recruits showed admiration. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You quickly ran through the hunting range of the spikeweed. In the huge vine not far from your head, the Catachan recruit nodded in affirmation. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You bravely faced the active attack of the Catachan catchers. Next to the rancid water pool not far from you, the Catachan recruits who stopped 3 Catachan face-eaters in advance shook their heads and sighed. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You escaped the Catachan catchers, but failed to notice the arrival of the heathen mosquitoes. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You were bitten by a pagan mosquito a few times, and the venom entered your body, and your internal organs began to rot. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You were on the verge of death. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. As you were dying, your rotting eyeballs seemed to see the figures of Catachan recruits. Your ears heard the beautiful blessings from the Catachan recruits. A Catachan fang pierced your heart. The end of your endless pain. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The Emperor bless you, my friend. The taciturn Catachan recruit, Sly Marble, said his final eulogy. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You are dead. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This simulation ended after 27 days. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This simulation has a retainable option. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket 1. Catachan Deadly Plants and Animals Illustrated Book. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket 2. A Catachan Tusked Melee Weapon. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket 3. Special Training for Catachan Recruits 1 month. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This simulation time has exceeded 24 hours, and the simulator loss has not been exempted. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Cooling time, 27 hours. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Please invest resources to reduce the cooling time. Currently not holding any resources. Close black lens bracket. Rorschach was confused by his reckless behavior in the simulator, but there was nothing he could do about it. So Rorschach considered the reward options listed on the simulator. From a practical standpoint, the first reward is useless. The living environment of Catachan is so special that it is rare even in the Warhammer universe. For the current Rorschach, the second reward can only be a collection of ballast. The skills of using Catachan's fangs are too demanding for ordinary people. Feeling sorry, Rorschach chose the third reward. 1 month of special training for Catachan recruits. Hiss. In an instant, Rorschach's muscles all over his body suddenly swelled up. Even the loose clothes he was wearing became much tighter. Countless methods of assassination and trapping were like natural instincts. It was completely engraved in the depths of Rorschach's memory. Catachan's recruit training is extraordinary. Rorschach, who had absorbed a lot of combat skills, rolled up his sleeves. He stared at the muscle lines on his forearms that moved with his heart and felt the joy from the bottom of his heart. During these days after crossing, Rorschach always lacked a sense of security. At this moment, Rorschach was full of confidence. As long as he continued to simulate, he could cope with all future crises. However, the Warhammer simulator needs time to cool down. If you don't want to wait, you need to invest resources to reduce the cooling time. Unfortunately, Rorschach doesn't know what type of resources the simulator needs. I can only wait for the right time to find out. At this moment, Rorschach, who was curled up on the sofa enjoying the afterglow of joy, seemed to remember something. He subconsciously looked at the wall clock in the apartment. He was surprised to find that several hours had passed while the hands were turning. Now, it was 12:20. Not only did he skip the morning class, he almost missed the afternoon part-time job. If I don't go out, my aunt will teach me a lesson. Rorschach jumped up from the sofa. He hurriedly grabbed his phone and keys and rushed out of the apartment. Rorschach pedaled his bicycle at high speed. Whether on TV or on the internet, the explosive news of Stark Industries continued to ferment. Even the window TV facing the street and the electronic GG sign hanging high were playing news reports. Even on the mobile phone screens of pedestrians on the street, Tony Stark was the only protagonist. However, this had nothing to do with Rorschach. He crossed several familiar streets and arrived at the door of a Chinese restaurant called Delicious. The restaurant was small and exquisite. But although it was small, it had everything. After years of hard work by his aunt, the name of Delicious Chinese Restaurant was known to everyone in Manhattan. Rorschach stepped into the store, walked through the neatly arranged tables and chairs, and walked to the counter. Even though lunchtime was over, in the corner of the restaurant, several rednecks dressed in cowboys were still feasting. Aunt Rorschach's superb cooking skills. For ordinary people in the United States who have monotonous diets and single cooking methods, it is no less than a dimensionality reduction attack. Good morning, Aunt. Rorschach walked up quickly and lay on the counter. At this moment, Aunt was sitting at the counter, the calculator under her fingertips was crackling, sorting out the accounts. Hearing Rorschach's greeting, Aunt didn't raise her head, and said sarcastically, "It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Mr. Rorschach, you are late again." Aunt is not very old, only about 35 years old. She has short hair and wears a white chef's outfit every day. The slightly round chin also highlights her neat and tidy temperament of a strong woman. Aunt stopped calculating the accounts and couldn't help rolling her eyes at the smiling Rorschach. Our tool man, apprentice Mike, has asked for a long vacation, starting from 1 week. Aunt pointed to the takeaway box not far away. "So, I'm going to suspend the takeout orders. You can come back after you deliver these." Big Mouth Mike. The image of a thin but very gluttonous black youth gradually became clear in Rorschach's memory. Didn't he always say he wanted to work overtime to learn cooking? Why did he suddenly take a vacation? A few days ago, Mike's 7-year-old brother disappeared. Aunt sighed, with a bit of sarcasm in her eyes. You also know what kind of morality the police in the poor community are. Rich people like Tony Stark are their service objects. Mike can only mobilize the social skills of relatives and friends. If I have time, I will contact Mike to help. Rorschach said seriously, and then he picked up the helmet on the counter. "Aunt, I'm going to deliver the food first, otherwise I'll be criticized again." He easily picked up the heavy takeout box with one hand and turned to go out. Smelly boy. The aunt at the counter stared at Rorschach's broad and powerful back, showing a gratified aunt's smile. However, she still blinked in confusion. Is it the growth and development period? Or is he secretly working out? Why does he seem to have become stronger? Dash 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 dash. After years of hard work and exploration by my aunt, the business strategy of the delicious Chinese restaurant is to choose the middle and low-end people. While ensuring good quality and low price, the taste is kept as much as possible. Therefore, the radiation range of most takeouts does not exceed 5 kilometers. It only took Rorschach 20 minutes to deliver most of the takeout orders. These are basically old customers who can't forget after tasting my aunt's cooking. Now, Rorschach only has one set meal for two in his hand. Riding a bicycle through several crowded streets, Rorschach arrived at a recently renovated apartment building. Rorschach walked to the door of the apartment and found that the door was closed and only residents could enter. So he chose to press the call device on the door. Rorschach said skillfully, "Excuse me, Mr. Eugene. Your takeout has arrived. Can you please go downstairs to get it?" Damn it. 403. Delivered to the door. Not long after, a slurred male voice came from the call device. Then, the closed door of the apartment opened with a pleasant ring. "If you don't open the door, I'll give you a shit." Rorschach shook his head and sighed. Based on past experience, he easily guessed that the customer was drunk. However, the service industry does not have the right to choose customers. Rorschach shrugged helplessly. He staggered into the apartment with the takeaway box. Dong dong dong. Not long after, Rorschach knocked on the door of room 403. Accompanied by a sound of footsteps, the door opened with a bang. An unpleasant smell of alcohol mixed with the smell of leaves suddenly hit him. Even the well-informed Rorschach couldn't help but frown. "Your takeaway, sir." Rorschach tried to keep a business smile and took the takeaway from the box. "Hurry. Thank you." A drunk blonde man behind the door reached out to take the takeaway and planned to close the door. Bang. However, Rorschach's palm suddenly pressed on the door. He interrupted the other person's action abruptly. "Sir, takeout is paid upon delivery, you haven't paid yet." Rorschach explained with a smile. The blonde man was obviously stunned for a moment, shaking his head to stay awake. Then, he turned and shouted into the room. "Hey, Eugene, come pay." "Pay? What to pay for? Do I still need to pay for takeout?" Not long after, a staggering tall figure came to the door. He roughly pushed away the drunken blonde man. His eyes were blood red, and he threatened Rorschach with a fierce expression. "Hey, kid, you better get out of here." Rorschach subconsciously narrowed his eyes. He calmly took out his cell phone from his pocket. After pressing it a few times, he showed it to the bald man. Eugene Paul, if you refuse to pay the fee, I will choose to call the police to solve the problem. How do you know my name? The bald man opened his eyes wide. Who sent you here? Obviously under the dual effects of alcohol and leaves, the bald man's mind was filled with confusion. Boy, you look familiar. After taking a closer look at the figure in front of him, the bald man looked suspicious. Rorschach. Eugene Paul, the former bully in Rorschach's high school. The reason why he is his ex is because he has been expelled from the school. The set meal for two is 50 yuan, and the delivery fee is 10 yuan. Rorschach did not intend to get involved with the drunken Eugene, not to mention that the two had no friendship. 60 yuan in total, thank you for your patronage. Your takeout is late. Eugene's expression changed back and forth, suddenly becoming much gloomier. I've been waiting for more than an hour. Eugene. At this moment, Luo Sha couldn't help but sigh, and he looked at the other party with a sincere expression. This is just a takeaway. If you are having a hard time, I can treat you to it. But you're obviously just having fun now, aren't you? Luo Sha narrowed his eyes and subconsciously twisted his neck. The drooping palms are slightly clenched, and the fingertips are moving back and forth. This is the starting move in Katachan fighting skills, hidden and deadly. I just don't plan to pay. What can you do to me? Call the police. Little man. The strong man Eugene suddenly grinned, his expression ferocious. Even the muscular shoulders swayed slightly, and the whole person was already waiting for the opportunity to move. He is still the school bully who bullies boys and girls, and has not changed at all. A minute ago, when Eugene discovered that the delivery boy turned out to be a high school alumnus, he was so drunk that he never thought of letting the other person leave. He hated that school so much. He also hates those sanctimonious good students. And right in front of me, there happens to be a very suitable human sandbag. In the eyes of others, this is a conflict with a clear winner. Google search reading. Rorschach is 1.75 meters tall and well proportioned. To the naked eye, he was a whole circle smaller than the tall Eugene. Not to mention, Eugene is a former school bully. He has much more experience in fighting and fighting all year round than an ordinary high school student. So, the blond man tried to stop Eugene, lest he hurt Rorschach and cause even greater trouble. Stop it, Eugene. Eugene. It's a pity that Eugene is like a bull in heat at this moment. He was completely indifferent to the dissuasion from his companions. He only has one thought now, and that is to make the student boy in front of him cry. Taste the fear, enjoy the fists, and learn to be in awe. However, even when facing Eugene with blood-red eyes, Rorschach still remained calm, his expression remained unchanged, and he showed no fear. Fear is nothing but the breakfast companion of Katachan humans. Cry, boy. At this time, Eugene suddenly raised his arm, and his heavy fist was about to hit Rorschach's face. Unexpectedly, Rorschach's palm had already bypassed Eugene's sight. Several hard knuckles hit Eugene hard under the ribs. Katachan fighting skills, one combo. Well. In an instant, the ferocious smile on Eugene's face froze. He subconsciously opened his mouth wide, and the brutal howl had already passed through his chest and was about to rise up his throat. Unfortunately, Rorschach showed no mercy. The other party was not given a chance to make a sound. Katachan fighting skills, 2 combos. The takeaway lunch box fell, and Rorschach's other palm danced like a sickle. He easily hit Eugene on the side of his neck. With just 2 clicks, the muscular Eugene's eyes instantly turned white. The whole person's feet went soft, and he fell to the ground like a rag doll. Boom! The wooden floor made a loud noise, which also made the blond man in the room open his mouth in shock. Too fast. Everything happened so fast. The situation between the strong and the weak was instantly reversed, which also broke the blond man's barren imagination. A seemingly ordinary high school student instantly knocked down Eugene, who was experienced in street fighting. Even when facing an attack from an adult, Eugene's physique can resist for a long time. In an instant, the blond man's drunkenness completely dissipated, and inexplicable fear filled his heart. He looked at Rorschach nervously and said in a trembling voice, "Please don't hurt me. You can take your mobile phone and wallet. 60 yuan, thank you for your patronage." Luo Sha's face was full of helplessness, and he could only take a deep breath and said, "You have money. Give it to me immediately." The blond man suddenly woke up from a dream. He groped in his pockets in a panic and rummaged for cash. 60 yuan. A few seconds later, the blond man reluctantly pulled out a few tattered bills, which amounted to exactly 60 yuan. I saw him shivering as he approached the door and handed out the banknotes tremblingly. "Thank you for your patronage." Rorschach, who tried to keep smiling, took the note. He hesitated and said, "Eugene is not dead, but he needs to recover for a few days." Ah! The blond man was stunned for a moment, then bowed with gratitude. Thank you, thank you." Rorschach shrugged his shoulders, bent down to pick up the takeaway lunchbox, and turned towards the elevator. He is a busy man, and there are countless jobs waiting for him in the restaurant. Call. The elevator descended slowly, and Rorschach breathed a sigh of relief. But his eyes were still full of excitement. "The first fight in my life, I won easily with an overwhelming advantage." Of course, if he had used the Katachan tusk just now, the first blow would have pierced the opponent's heart. However, the small conflicts between the two sides are not so bloody and cruel. Soon, Rorschach walked out of the apartment with light steps. The breeze blowing on his face gradually calmed down the restless Rorschach. I subconsciously analyzed the consequences of this conflict. He defends himself in the face of threats. Not even the police would scold a high school student for his adventurous impulse. Also, a school bully who was expelled from high school. Not to mention that he has not yet reached the drinking age, he is drunk and causing trouble and even smokes leaves. I'm afraid the charges will be more serious if investigated. In short, Rorschach was not afraid of Eugene calling the police. After thinking about this, Luo Sha showed a slight smile. The pedaling motion of the bike is also smoother. 10 minutes later, Rorschach returned to the restaurant. He immediately joined in the preparation of ingredients without stopping. As time goes by, there are more and more customers in the restaurant. Maybe it's because it's close to the weekend. People who have had a hard week choose to reward themselves with a sumptuous dinner. This also made Rorschach and her aunt both painful and happy. It was only 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and the delicious Chinese restaurant was already bustling with people. People of different skin colors were either chatting or eating fiercely. Laughter, singing, and curses were mixed with the bright neon lights of Chinatown after dark. It shows the ubiquitous breath of life. Rorschach, who had just cleared a dining table, took a break from his busy schedule. While wiping his sweat, he enjoyed the excitement that belonged to others. To a certain extent, he quite likes this kind of orderly and chaotic life. The people who come to dine here come from different professions and races. But at this moment, delicious food eliminates their class, wealth and other artificially divided attributes. All that's left is the surprise of tasting delicious food and the fun of meeting friends. Rorschach. Serve. Rorschach was slightly absent-minded, as if he had returned to his previous life. But then, he was interrupted by his aunt in the kitchen, and he entered a working state. No. 38. General Tso's chicken, 1 person. The bustling scene in the store lasted until 9 o'clock in the evening. After the last guest left, Rorschach and her aunt began to eat. After Rorschach quickly finished his dinner. Under the instruction of my aunt, I packed several clean leftovers in takeout boxes. He gave it to the homeless people waiting in front of the restaurant. This is a kind act that my aunt has continued for several years. As long as the delicious Chinese restaurant is open, homeless people in the neighborhood won't go hungry. When everything in the store is cleared, the lights are turned off and the store is locked. Rorschach took his aunt on his bicycle and went home to rest. At 10 o'clock in the evening, Rorschach lay in bed in a daze after a brief rinse. From time to time, the sound of the calculator returning to zero could be heard in his ears. It was the aunt in the living room who was sorting out the accounts and calculating the income. Rorschach, who was not sleepy, chose to open the Warhammer simulator. Open black lens bracket cooling time, 17 hours. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Please invest resources to reduce the cooling time. Currently not holding any resources. Close black lens bracket. Rorschach frowned, grabbed the phone thrown next to the pillow, and pointed it at the simulator. Open black lens bracket. The current resources do not match. Please put resources to reduce the cooling time. Close black lens bracket. The perseverant Rorschach tried one after another on toilet paper, keychains, sheets and other miscellaneous items. But the simulator in front of me still refused. What resources are needed? At least give me a hint. Rorschach fell into endless trouble. Then, he seemed to remember something. Rorschach was seen biting his fingertips with a solemn expression, squeezing out a few drops of blood, and held it up in front of the simulator. Open black lens bracket. The current resources do not match, please put resources to reduce the cooling time. Close black lens bracket. Sleep. Rorschach cursed and turned over, sucked his fingertips, and closed his eyes. In the basement of the apartment, the banging and roaring of electric drills continued. Even though it was the weekend, Rorschach still chose to get up early and continue finishing the safe house. However, every time he worked for a period of time, he had to open the simulator interface. Check the cooling time again. Time passed until the safe house was almost cleaned up. The cooling time of the simulator slowly ended and reached the end. Rorschach rubbed his hands impatiently and immediately started a new simulation. Open black lens bracket. Simulation starting, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Current identity, Catachan recruit. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Do you want to descend as this? Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. If you refuse, the simulator will choose to descend randomly. Close black lens bracket. The simulator actually has a new mode. Rorschach licked his lips and blinked his eyes. He thought about it and chose to conduct this simulation as a recruit. Open black lens bracket. You have landed in the Warhammer universe. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Time 41. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Location unknown. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You have become a Catachan recruit. You are still immature and eager to offer your loyalty to the Emperor. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You are temporarily recruited by the Empire and become a member of a Catachan regiment. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You set foot on the surface of the planet. You are smart and capable and are appreciated by Colonel Iron Eyes. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You are assigned to a veteran patrol team. You will be responsible for reconnaissance and assault missions behind enemy lines with 4 Catachan veterans. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You have obtained the basic equipment of Catachan recruits, a laser gun and 4 fragmentation grenades. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You try to ask the Catachan veterans for battlefield survival skills. The veterans sneer at this, but still teach you battlefield knowledge. You seem to have successfully integrated into this team. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. On the first day, you conducted your first patrol under the leadership of the Catachan veterans, and you gradually became familiar with the geographical environment of this planet. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This is a desolate and desolate death planet with extremely poor visibility. Only within a short distance can you distinguish between the enemy and us. The patrol team will face greater dangers and challenges at any time. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. On the second day, you and the veterans received an order from Colonel Iron Eyes. You will go to an unknown location to conduct intelligence reconnaissance for the Empire's offensive plan. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You have been given the authority to equip more weapons. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You have not forgotten the veterans' teachings. You only chose a laser gun and 10 fragmentation grenades, as well as the traditional clothing of the Catachan people, a red headscarf. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You have won the praise of the veterans, and you have gradually adapted to everything here. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. On the third day, you followed the veterans into the unfamiliar area, taking every step carefully, for fear of alarming the unknown enemy. Tonight is safe and sound, and you have survived. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. On the fourth day, you and the veterans ran into the reconnaissance scouts of the alien civilization. They were a group of green-skinned orcs wearing blue iron armor and holding broken guns. Close black lens bracket. The Catachan veterans were used to it and chose to launch a sneak attack before the greenskins could react. You and the veterans wiped out all the greenskins. Open black lens bracket. You survived, unscathed, and cleaned up the battlefield with the veterans. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. A Catachan veteran who was familiar with the alien race accidentally discovered that the greenskins in front of him seemed to be from the Deathskull clan. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This is a cunning greenskin clan that is good at picking up scraps and creating war machines. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. For you who are responsible for the reconnaissance mission, this is not good news worth celebrating. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The greenskins on this planet may have the terrifying ability to manufacture heavy weapons and equipment. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. On the 5th day, you encountered more greenskins, and they came to you crazily. WAAAGH. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You found that the blue armor of these greenskins was more refined, and the weapons they used were also powerful. A brave Catachan veteran was besieged by countless greenskins and died. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Before you could mourn, one of your arms was bitten off by an orc boy. You endured the excruciating pain and smashed its big head with a fragmentation grenade. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You lost too much blood and fell into a weak state. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. On the 6th day, your team seemed to have entered the hinterland of the greenskin-controlled area. More greenskins attacked and launched WAAAGH. To stop your progress. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. An unfortunately seriously injured Catachan veteran chose to be the last one to leave, and cut a bloody path for the entire patrol. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. After several fierce battles, your injuries did not worsen but gradually improved. The remaining 2 Catachan veterans agreed that this was a blessing from the Emperor, and you agreed with them. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. On the 7th day, you and 2 veterans passed through the territory of the Deathskull clan. In a place called Widow Valley, you actually found a ancient giant garbage factory of the Deathskull clan. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This is a mobile fortress belonging to the greenskin orcs, a battle mecha. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You and the Catachan veterans agree that the green orcs cannot be given time to grow in strength. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You sent out a coordinate signal and risked a suicidal sneak attack to destroy the entire factory. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The 3 of you gradually fell into the encirclement of the green orc tide. A Catachan veteran was unfortunately killed again. The sneak attack failed and the mission was terminated. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You chose to live and die with the only surviving Catachan veteran. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The 2 of you pulled the safety devices of all the fragmentation grenades together, shouted, "For the Emperor," and rushed into the encirclement of the green orcs. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Your body was torn into pieces under the cover of flames and shock waves. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You are dead. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This simulation ends. It took 7 days. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This simulation obtains the option to keep. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. 1. Fragmentation grenade 10 pieces. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. 2. Catachan Saber Night Reaper finely crafted. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. 3. Catachan Veterans Red Turban brand new. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. This simulation has exceeded 24 hours, and the simulator loss is not exempted. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Cooling time, 7 hours. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Please invest resources to reduce the cooling time. Currently no resources are held. Close black lens bracket. The site quickly skipped the simulator's reward options. Rorschach's eyes suddenly lit up. Although the rewards still did not include the Imperial firearms he had been thinking about. But a finely crafted Catachan saber is undoubtedly a more precious trophy. Rorschach directly chose the second option. In an instant, accompanied by the sudden weight in the palm of his hand. A giant saber as long as an adult's forearm appeared in front of Rorschach. Compared with ordinary Catachan tusks, the overall shape of the Night Reaper is narrower and longer. The blade adopts a three-edged blade design. It is extremely suitable for bleeding and cutting the throat, adding a difficult-to-heal wound to the flesh tissue. At the same time, the entire blade of the saber is sprayed with matte black paint. It avoids light reflection and is more suitable for stealth assassination operations. Rorschach held the finely crafted Night Reaper tightly and played with it repeatedly. The smile on his mouth never dissipated completely. "Sweet, your smile is sweet." At this moment, a familiar music ringtone sounded in Rorschach's pocket. He subconsciously answered the phone. However, after listening to just a few words, a surge of anger suddenly surged in Rorschach's chest, turning the tide. When Rorschach arrived at the delicious Chinese restaurant with a hurried look on his face. The white police car of the Manhattan precinct had already parked on the side of the road. A yellow warning coil stretched out over half of the sidewalk. At the same time, a fat policeman with a big belly was holding a paper cup of coffee with a leisurely expression, and occasionally dismissed the passers-by who came to watch. In front of the restaurant, there were several non-staff reporters from unknown tabloids squatting in the corner. From time to time, they glanced at a black policeman on guard duty with twinkling eyes. Rorschach jumped off his bicycle and ran in front of the black policeman. "Sorry, officer, I am a family member of the shop owner." Rorschach. "Right." The black policeman showed a gentle smile to Rorschach and nodded. "Your aunt has told us in advance, you can go in." The black policeman continued, "But be careful where you step, kid. The young man from the forensics department is on his way, and it will take time to extract the physical evidence at the scene." "I see." Rorschach took a deep breath. He bent over the cordon and walked into the restaurant door. It was as if Rorschach's arrival attracted other people's attention. The few tabloid reporters who were smoking not far away turned their heads. He spat several times in the direction of the black policeman with an expressionless face. Black police officers seemed to turn a blind eye and remained indifferent. But the palm on the handle of the gun couldn't help but tighten a little. At this time, Rorschach entered the restaurant and only glanced at it a few times. The whole person's face became more and more gloomy. I saw rows of solid wood tables and chairs overturned to the ground. A large number of bowls, chopsticks and cutlery were scattered all over the place, some of which were completely scrapped. Between the disorganized floors, brass-colored bullet casings scattered everywhere like a goddess scattering flowers. On the ceiling, countless dark bullet holes continued to extend all around, almost covering the entire restaurant. For a moment, it seemed like this was not a restaurant. Rather, it was the remains of a building that had just finished a guerrilla war. Rorschach suddenly became furious and clenched his fists. But he still suppressed his emotions and walked quickly to his aunt. At this moment, the aunt, whose short hair was soaked with sweat, had dull eyes. She sat on her exclusive chair with a pale face, her palms crossed together. The rough fingertips were bloodless from clenching them tightly. At the same time, a middle-aged policeman with a brown beard was sitting opposite his aunt. He seemed to be asking about the case, and he seemed to be passing the time. Because it starts from the time Rorschach enters the door. The other party lowered his head to check the watch on his wrist far more often than he asked his aunt. "Aunt, are you not hurt?" Rorschach called softly and put his arms around his aunt's shoulders. "Rorschach." The dazed aunt came back to her senses in an instant. Her eye circles gradually turned red, and she said with a slight cry, "Just a little bit, I will never see you again." In an instant, the anger in Rorschach's eyes could almost ignite the air around him. He took a deep breath and comforted softly. "Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. I'm here and everything is over." After a few minutes, I saw that my aunt's mood became much calmer. Rorschach raised his head with a serious expression and looked at the bearded policeman. "Officer, what happened? What other big things could happen?" The bearded policeman frowned slightly, his eyes showing a little irritation. "It's just a daily routine in Manhattan. Several masked robbers robbed property, and your aunt tried to stop it, but one of the robbers turned out to be a newbie, too nervous, pulled the trigger and shot up the entire restaurant." "Don't worry, kid. The robbers in Manhattan are basically veterans. They usually only dare to rob money and will not hurt anyone." Hee hee. Rorschach suddenly became extremely angry and laughed. His face was gloomy, and he raised his hand and pointed at the messy interior of the restaurant. If this is not a big deal, in the eyes of you police, only hurting or killing people is a big deal. Is this how you police officers work with all the citizens' taxes? Does the New York Police Department, which has failed in its duties, need to give me a tax refund? Sir, I am just an ordinary police officer. If you think your freedom rights have been violated, you are welcome to go to the mayor of New York to trouble. Before he finished speaking, the bearded policeman suddenly stood up and walked out of the restaurant without looking back. Also, it is the responsibility of the FBI and the crime squad to catch serious criminals. I just want to remind you out of good intentions that if criminals find that there are many people with money and stupid people in a place, they will definitely come back again. I suggest you stop working for a while. Bar. The bearded policeman seemed not to care whether the physical evidence at the scene was intact or not. He waved the black policeman away as he walked. You. Rorschach's eyes narrowed slightly, and he was about to scold him. The ant beside him grabbed his arm. Auntie closed her eyes, her tone full of exhaustion. Rorschach, I said, poor people cannot get help from these police officers, and rich people are the targets of their responsibility. Forget it, consider yourself unlucky. Rorschach's eyelids twitched a few times. He turned to look at his aunt, with an extremely stiff smile on his face. Okay, Auntie, I will listen to Auntie on everything. However, Rorschach had other plans in his heart. Consider yourself unlucky. Impossible. This matter will not end until one dies. After a moment of silence, Rorschach leaned over to his aunt and whispered. Aunt, shall I take you home to rest first? Aunt's eyes showed some hesitation. The store has not been cleaned up yet, and the losses have not been counted. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. Rorschach quickly patted his chest and made a promise. Seeing Rorschach's tough attitude, his aunt no longer insisted and obeyed obediently. This sudden life and death shock made her, who was kind to others, unbearable for a while. Take your time. Rorschach carefully helped his aunt up. The two walked out of the restaurant hand in hand. Hello. Manhattan Internet Radio. This is the New York Star. What do you think of this armed robbery? I'm an intern reporter for the Daily Bugle. However, at this time, several unknown tabloid reporters suddenly rushed into the restaurant. They had no respect and no scruples. Just desperately stepped on the physical evidence on the floor and rushed forward. In an instant, the anger that had been pent up in Rorschach's heart for a long time was completely ignited. He took a step forward, directly protected his aunt behind his back, and raised his hands. The fighting posture of Katachan martial arts, ready. At this moment, Rorschach's eyeballs were bloodshot and his eyes were bloodshot. The fierceness and savagery from the Katachan jungle burst out from his body. Get out. However, before Rorschach did anything out of the ordinary, several tabloid reporters stopped in an instant, and looked at each other tacitly. Almost rushed out of the door with a rolling crawl. It's just an interview, there's no need to be so angry, right? At this moment, the aunt patted Rorschach's tot back with relief. Forget it, Rorschach, let's go home. Aunt. Be obedient, let's go. Oh. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the sunset enveloped the entire New York. Rorschach had a stern face and wore a black peaked cap. Carrying a gray shoulder bag, he stepped out of the apartment door. A few minutes ago, my aunt reluctantly fell asleep with a little fear. Before going to bed, her aunt warned Rorschach again. Let him clean up the messy restaurant and put up a closure notice. Rorschach is very obedient. At this moment, he was on his way back to the restaurant. It's just that it's in Rorschach's shoulder bag. There was an extra dark Katachan saber. Teenage Rorschach can endure any threat. For example, among the distant stars, Thanos is eyeing him. For example, Ultron, who has not yet been created, is trying to destroy humanity. But the premise of everything is that the ant was not harmed in any way. Otherwise, fight until death. Moreover, I have learned a lot over the years. It's enough for Rorschach, who is completely disappointed with the higher-ups who maintain order in the city. Justice is good too. Whatever is fair, only rely on your own hands. Get it back. When Rorschach arrives at the restaurant, the forensics officers promised by the Manhattan District Bureau still have not arrived. Maybe it won't come at all. After all, there was no loss of life in one case. There were no robberies in Chinatown that sparked a public outcry. The final destination is to become archive materials in the Manhattan District Bureau and become history. Rorschach skillfully rolled up his sleeves and began to pick up the rubbish on the ground. Keep what is still usable to reduce losses. Throw away whatever is not used and count it as a loss. However, it didn't take long. Rorschach accidentally caught a glimpse of a figure wandering back and forth outside the restaurant door. He was a blond tramp with shabby clothes and a stooped back. Rorschach stopped cleaning up. He walked directly to the door and said, "Friend, the restaurant will be closed during these days. You should go to the church to find some food first." Before he finished speaking, the unshaven blond homeless man stopped. He glanced at Rorschach timidly, his eyes flickering. Then he seemed to gather his courage. He raised his head and stammered. I didn't come here for the food. When the robbery happened, I was sleeping on the street, and I saw the group of robbers. They all wore red sportswear, and their shouting accents didn't sound like native New Yorkers, they seemed to be Slavs." After listening to the tramp's words, Rorschach narrowed his eyes slightly and murmured, "Red tracksuits. Slavs, are they the tracksuit gang?" The tracksuit gang is a criminal gang operating in New York City and surrounding cities. Most of the key personnel inside are Slavs. Rorschach's thoughts were spinning rapidly. He pondered for a moment, then reached into his pocket and took out a roll of cash. Rorschach took out a few 20 denomination bills and stuffed them into the homeless man's jacket pocket. "Friend, thank you for the information. This is your reward." However, something beyond Rorschach's imagination happened. The blond tramp in front of him suddenly turned red. He picked up the banknotes in his pocket with trembling fingers and tried to return them to Rorschach. "I'm not here for the money. You and your aunt are both good people. I'm so happy to be able to eat your food, it makes me feel like I'm still alive, and just living has meaning." The blond tramp's eyes seemed to be filled with tears and he was overcome with emotion. At the same time, he accidentally exposed the inflamed and ulcerated pinholes on his arms. He is an addict. Rorschach noticed this keenly, but he did not take back the money given to the other party. Rorschach sighed and suddenly asked, "What's your name?" "My name is Robert Reynolds." The blond tramp hesitated and announced his name. At the same time, he took back the money and stopped insisting on his opinion. Robert. Rorschach always felt that this name sounded familiar. But he soon forgot about it. Now, he has more important things to solve. Tracksuit gangsters, Slavs. Eugene Paul. Eugene is a typical Slavic surname. At this moment, Rorschach squinted his eyes, and a clearly visible clue appeared in his mind. After Rorschach exchanged a few words with Robert again, he casually sent him away. "Turn around and close the door and lock it." Rorschach rode his beloved bicycle all the way west. Dash 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 dash. Manhattan Apartments, 403. A depressed Eugene Paul slumped on the sofa, with a plastic neck brace fixed around his neck. Even if the doctor repeatedly advises, abstaining from alcohol and smoking during treatment can speed up the recovery of the body. But obviously, Eugene is not a patient who likes to be obeyed. Eugene drank his beer cautiously, occasionally tilting his eyes and scrolling through his mobile phone to pass the time. He tried to relieve his physical pain and psychological frustration. He is Eugene, a physically strong bully who has been in high school for many years. He was beaten up severely by an inconspicuous takeaway boy. This incident simply made him a laughingstock among his friends. Losing face. Damn yellow-skinned monkey. Eugene, who was getting increasingly irritated, threw down his phone and closed his eyes, trying to relieve the depression in his heart. Dong dong dong. At this moment, a knock on the door suddenly sounded, interrupting Eugene's meditation. Eugene opened his eyes angrily and shouted loudly. "Who is it?" No one responded outside the door, only after a brief pause. There was another knock on the door. Dong dong dong. "Let me know who you are and you'll be dead." Swearing, Eugene stood up from the sofa stiffly. Holding one hand on his neck, he walked towards the door. And just when he grabbed the door handle and turned the switch. Bang! With a loud noise, the wooden door in front of Eugene suddenly bounced open and opened with a bang. In an instant, the entire wooden door was packed with huge driving force and hit Eugene's chest hard. Ah! As screams resounded throughout the room, Eugene's tall body suddenly fell to the floor. Hello, Eugene. Footsteps sounded slowly. Rorschach, wearing a peaked cap, appeared in front of the door with a smile on his face. Who? Eugene endured the severe pain and tried to support his body, trying to see the attacker clearly. However, when he finally saw the figure in front of him, his eyes widened. Shouts full of panic, like screaming chickens, came and went. Don't come over. Rorschach said nothing and continued to step forward. At this moment, the muscular Eugene was like a caterpillar, squirming desperately on the floor. After a few minutes, Eugene could no longer endure the physical pain. He lay on the ground with a distorted expression and completely gave up resistance. In an instant, Eugene's vision was blurred by tears. His whole body seemed to be in a state of collapse. Rorschach, please spare my life. In New York City, murder is a first-degree felony. Woo. I was wrong, I was really wrong, I shouldn't bully my classmates. I shouldn't bully others. Woo, I was wrong. Rorschach, who kept smiling, squatted in front of Eugene. He looked down at the other person with cold eyes. I ask, you answer. Clear. Eugene, who was in tears, nodded quickly. Understand. Did you fire any shots during the robbery of the restaurant around 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Ah. Eugene was stunned, his eyes only blank. Robbery. Shooting. Luo Sha's eyes narrowed. Eugene, who was still trying to learn how to read words and emotions, immediately swore. I swear to God. Eugene, never use a gun to bully people. Moreover, in the afternoon, I was still receiving treatment in the hospital. Rorschach frowned. Did he find the wrong person? Rorschach subconsciously turned his eyes. Stare into Eugene's eyes. Yesterday you were beaten up, and today my restaurant was robbed. Eugene, do you think I will believe this is a coincidence? Before he finished speaking, Luo Sha stood up suddenly. He stepped on Eugene's chest. The weight of the entire body is slowly exerted under the feet. Ah! For a moment, the features on Eugene's face were distorted and his lips turned white. Strings of sweat the size of peas quickly seeped out from his forehead. He shouted at the top of his lungs, almost in a wailing voice. Rorschach, please believe me. I really don't know anything. Apart from bullying my classmates occasionally, I have never done anything illegal. However, the silent Rorschach pulled out a huge, narrow saber from his backpack. Move slowly and firmly. I saw Rorschach leaning down with a saber in hand, and the tip of the saber was pointed at Eugene's eyes. Eugene, who was paralyzed on the ground, could almost feel the coldness coming from the sharp saber. This made his liver and gallbladder split, and he didn't dare to move at all. At the same time, a cold countdown also popped out from between Rorschach's teeth. 1. It's Sergei. Under this extremely terrifying mental pressure, Eugene's eyes instantly collapsed, and he shouted in a broken voice. It must be Sergei. It must be him. His cousin is a gangster. Sergei told me that their whole family has a gang background. A smile appeared on the corner of Rorschach's mouth, and it disappeared briefly. His gesture of holding the saber remained unchanged. But the force pressing on Eugene's chest was reduced by most of it. I thought Sergei was just bragging. Who doesn't know a few gangster friends? But I didn't expect that he would participate in the robbery and robbed your restaurant. Eugene had tears in his eyes, and his words seemed to contain unspeakable grievances. Rorschach fell into deep thought and suddenly asked, "Why do you think it was Sergei who did it?" "I'm not sure. But Sergei didn't come to the hospital to see me this afternoon." Eugene's expression kept changing, and he said angrily, "Moreover, the embarrassing story of my injury has spread throughout the entire social circle. Except for Sergei, no one else people know about this. One more thing. Sergei has liked tinkering with firearms since he was a child, but his skills were so bad that he was too embarrassed to show off, so he only mentioned it to me. Sergei is the blonde man I saw yesterday when delivering food." Rorschach took a deep breath, thought briefly, and made a decision. He slowly put away the Katachan saber and moved away from the sole of Eugene's foot. "His full name?" Rorschach asked. "Sergei Petrov the Younger," Eugene blurted out. "Where do you live?" Rorschach continued to ask. "Probably somewhere in Brooklyn." I really don't know where exactly, because I've never been to his house. Eugene, racking his brains, tried his best to explain. Now he was afraid that Rorschach would not believe his words and continue to be violent. Rorschach looked at Eugene again and nodded with satisfaction. Now Eugene was too frightened to lie. He really wasn't involved in the robbery. Rorschach turned his eyes and suddenly found the mobile phone that Eugene had thrown on the sofa. He stepped forward, picked it up, and handed it to Eugene on the ground. Call Sergei and ask where he is. Clear. Eugene took the phone, carefully searched for the number, and dialed it. Unfortunately, there were only blind tones coming from the other side of the phone, with no one answering. Eugene held his neck with an ugly expression. He looked at Luo Sha and said with a wry smile. No one answered at all. Rorschach nodded expressionlessly. This was also within his expectation. Borrow it. Rorschach took the phone from Eugene's hand and turned to leave. The long night is just the beginning. Just when he was about to step out of the room, Luo Sha suddenly stopped and turned to look back. Do you know the rules to save your life? Eugene, who was still trembling on the ground, quickly answered. I will not call the police. Nor will I tell anyone. I will try my best to be a good person. Thank you for your cooperation. Rorschach nodded with satisfaction and walked out of the room. Wait until the footsteps in the corridor gradually fade away. Only then did Eugene hold his body up with difficulty, groaning in pain from time to time. It's simply an unnecessary disaster. The traffic in the middle of the street is dense, and the piercing horns sound one after another. As night falls, the bright lights of neon lights continue to shine on pedestrians returning home on the roadside. It also reflected Rorschach's stern face. At this moment, he was looking through Eugene's social account. Look for clues about the next target, Sergei. Ding dong. At this moment, a Twitter message from Eugene appeared in Rorschach's sight. He clicked it casually, and the photos from Sergei Petrov were slowly loaded. The photo appears to have been taken in a dimly lit bar booth. Facing the camera, Sergei's upper body was exposed, his expression was extremely excited and his eyes were fiery. Next to him, there were two naked women sticking out their buttocks and posing. But it was Rorschach who was the only focus. But it was a bunch of banknotes tightly held in Sergei's two palms in the photo. Rorschach roughly calculated that there were more than 2,000 yuan in cash in the photo alone. Can a poor guy who can barely pay for takeout become rich overnight? Such a miracle may really exist in the world. However, it does not belong to Sergei Petrov Jr. He is definitely one of the robbers who robbed the restaurant during the day. Rorschach's eyes changed, and he sneered. Got you. Then, Rorschach put away his phone, turned the handlebars, and started to speed along the street. Brooklyn, Blueberry nightclub. Sergei, who was not vigilant at all, was spending crazily in the store and enjoying the night. Perhaps to stimulate the injured Eugene. Sergei even thoughtfully marked the address of the nightclub in the photo. This greatly reduced the difficulty of Rorschach's search. At this moment, Rorschach faced the night wind, passed through the light beams of the street lamps, and ran towards the target. However, before that, he needed something to start this bloody midnight carnival. Rorschach looked along the road and soon found a small supermarket. By the time Rorschach finished shopping, the cash he had on him was almost gone. A steel pipe as thick as a finger and more than a foot long. A roll of toilet paper and 2 boxes of nails. A military oil paint stick and a pair of heavy military boots. In addition, because the supermarket was holding a promotional lottery, Rorschach unexpectedly won a red men's headscarf as a consumption reward. Under the night, Rorschach stared at the red headscarf in his hand. He couldn't help but smile coldly. There are countless bars and nightclubs in Brooklyn. Google search and read. But there is only one that is the most famous. Blueberry nightclub. There are students who go out for entertainment, and white-collar workers who indulge after get-off work. There are rich white people who are looking for a romantic encounter, and people of all colors who sell happiness. As long as you dare to think and make any demands, you can find it from the Blueberry nightclub and satisfy it. Of course, this is not a free service, and it is even more expensive. It is approaching midnight. Drunk Sergei rushed out of the back door of the nightclub and staggered into the dimly lit alley. This is an escape route that only regular customers are allowed to use. It is usually used to avoid enemies or the police. And Sergei has just become a junior member of this nightclub. He barely has the qualifications to try it out. Although the nightclub manager only agreed because of Sergei's cousin's face. But Sergei didn't dislike it, and was even quite happy. Because today, with his own efforts, he helped his cousin solve a wish. And got a generous reward by the way. I, Sergei, am a rising gang star in New York City. Hee. At this moment, Sergei, who was full of confidence, couldn't help but smile foolishly. Then, he subconsciously recalled the smooth touch he had just felt. The women in the Blueberry nightclub, no matter their figure or appearance, were all top-notch goods. Unfortunately, the beauties in the store are forbidden to exchange contact information with guests. They are not even allowed to leave the nightclub. Only higher-level nightclub members can stay overnight if they accept private invitations. So, Sergei planned to contact a familiar technician to see if he could continue his struggle tonight. However, the drunken Sergei didn't notice. In the shadow behind him, a red headscarf. The terrifying figure with the whole face covered by black and green oil paint is slowly emerging. That was the long-awaited Rorschach. The silent Rorschach did not give Sergei any chance to resist. He stepped hard on the ground, and the whole person came behind Sergei in the blink of an eye. Veins on his arms popped up one after another, and Rorschach's arm was wrapped around Sergei's neck. Sergei, who was suddenly attacked, had no time to make any sound. He could only wave his arms in panic, trying to get rid of Rorschach's control. But it was useless. Just a few seconds later, Sergei rolled his eyes. His body gradually became limp and powerless, and he was about to suffocate to death. Rorschach, with cold eyes, relaxed his arms slightly. To prevent the other party from dying in the alley. The place was wrong, and the time was not right. There were some things that Sergei needed to explain clearly. Then, Rorschach suddenly bent down and carried Sergei's heavy body. He turned around and left quickly, disappearing deep into the deserted alley. This place was too close to the nightclub. It was not a suitable place for interrogation. Before that, Rorschach had already found a good place for talking. Bang! Sergei's heavy body was like a broken sack, thrown to the ground by Rorschach, splashing countless dust. This is an abandoned property with no owner. Far away from the street, the nearest residents are also 200 meters away. Rorschach can do anything without worry. Perhaps because of Rorschach's rough action, Sergei, who was in a coma, gradually woke up. He groaned in pain and wanted to turn over on the ground. But Rorschach, who was standing beside him, suddenly raised his foot and stepped on his messy blonde head. Sergei Petrov Jr., Rorschach asked knowingly. However, Sergei, who was dizzy, did not seem to understand the current situation. While trying to struggle to get up, he shouted angrily. "Do you know who I am? Do you know who my cousin is?" Rorschach sneered. The other foot in military boots was raised high and suddenly fell down. Crack, accompanied by a crisp sound of fracture. One of Sergei's arms was like dry firewood, breaking easily. Sergei's miserable cry just came out. He was blocked by Rorschach's shoe sole and suffocated directly in his mouth. At this moment, Sergei, with blue veins on his neck, was like a dying fish. As he trembled all over, countless sweat soaked his thin clothes. I don't know how long it took. I felt the strength of the struggle under my feet weakened. Rorschach continued to ask with cold eyes. I will only ask once, who proposed the goal of robbing the delicious Chinese restaurant? After Rorschach asked, he moved the sole of his shoe that was stepping on Sergei's mouth. Sergei was now in a very embarrassed state, no longer as rebellious as before. He kept bleeding from his mouth, flowing along the corners of his mouth to the ground. Sergei raised his head slightly, and his eyes seemed to be full of resentment, which disappeared in a flash. But he still said incoherently, "I was the one who brought it up first. Why? There might not be enough cash in the restaurant. If you go to the supermarket next door, wouldn't you be able to rob more cash? Is it because there is no risk in that restaurant?" Rorschach stared at Sergei expressionlessly. When Sergei heard Rorschach's question, there was some hesitation in his eyebrows. But soon, he made the decision to confess everything. Because Rorschach once again stepped on his severed hand. I say anything. We are not just trying to steal money, but we are looking for excitement and enjoying the pleasure of crime in our last free time. My cousin is the little leader of the sportswear gang. He said that the rules of the underground world have completely changed. A month ago, the new underground king unified the gangs on the entire East Coast. All criminal organizations must obey his command. Private crimes are not allowed. Each gang can only rely on the criminal industry assigned by the underground king to make profits and obtain money. Those who are good at robbing banks can only rob banks, and those who are good at selling noodles can only sell noodles. If you want to change the gang business, you need to pay a high crime fee to the underground king. Damn it. If you can't commit crimes as you please, why join a gang? This is a joke. But now no one dares to disobey the underground king's order, and no one thinks this is a joke. Hundreds of lives have created new rules and a new order. Having said this, Sergei swallowed hard, and then said with trembling breath. So, I'm just looking for an opportunity to help my cousin relieve his psychological pressure and complete the entrance test of the sportswear gang. After all, my cousin has always taken care of me, so joining his gang is not a bad thing, right? Quote. Where is your cousin now? Rorschach suddenly asked, squinting his eyes. Today is Saturday, it should be the time for the gang to take stock of their finances. Sergei lay on the ground dejectedly. It was as if he had completely given up on struggling. I once accidentally eavesdropped on my cousin's phone. Near the Brooklyn Bridge, close to the East River, there is a place called Warehouse 10. It is the secret stronghold of the sportswear gang. If you're looking for him, he's probably there. I saw Sergei asked for the address. Rorschach, who was wearing a red scarf, nodded his chin with satisfaction. He suddenly took a step back and bowed. Sergei. Sergei, who was feeling lucky, subconsciously raised his head. PFF'd. A giant dark saber suddenly pierced Sergei's eye socket. The extremely sharp saber with a little bit of white liquid penetrated through the blonde hair on the back of the head. Thank you for your cooperation. Rorschach, with a stern expression, withdrew the giant saber. He shook the red and white mixture on the blade. The giant saber is restored to like new condition. A truly finely crafted Katachan weapon. It didn't take much effort on Rorschach's part. It easily ended Sergei's short life. Rorschach is not a murderous person. Just for a peaceful life. There is nothing you can do about getting your hands stained with blood. Rorschach used the toe of his military boot to stir Sergei's body. I saw the body hidden in the other hand behind my back. The phone with the recording function turned on is running quietly. Apparently, Mr. Sergei did not realize his mistake. Rorschach bent down and picked up the phone. They also took away all the items that could prove their identity and the little remaining cash from the corpse's pocket. Immediately afterwards, he carefully cleaned up the traces left at the scene. Turn around and leave. It's past midnight. The night sky remained bright for the first half of the night. Gradually it was obscured by thick clouds and fog, and the sky was covered with dark clouds. The damp smell in the air is getting thicker. It seemed like a downpour was coming. The banks of the tidal East River. Warehouse 10, facing the Brooklyn Bridge, is hidden among many buildings. If one investigated on paper, one would find a small warehouse in front of them. It was used as a place for idle items by an obscure listed company in Manhattan. Under the layers of packaging, just pay attention to the traces and attire of people entering and exiting. Even the police will be available to guard the warehouse. Vladimir Veitch. It was with this ingenious plan that he quickly gained the favor of the gang leader. He has completely become one of the most famous leaders of the sportswear gang. However, in recent times, rapid changes in the underworld. It also put Vicky into a dire situation, and her glory was gone. Do criminals need order? It is required to a certain extent. Word-of-mouth gang rules can help most criminals escape legal punishment. It can also prevent greater friction between gangs that are in constant conflict, causing losses in economic interests. However, when the gang rules that can only be understood are completely realized. And after it became an insurmountable order. Vicky was suddenly surprised to find out. His degree of freedom is even less than that of ordinary citizens in New York City. However, Vicky had no retreat. Above is the gang leader who is strategizing and acting cruelly. And the even more terrifying underground king. Below are the gang members who are waiting for food, and the profits from crime are decreasing year by year. In a steel jungle, as the middle-level leader of the sportswear gang, Vicky can only survive. In the brightly lit warehouse, wooden boxes are almost piled up around him. And it was in an open space surrounded by a pile of wooden boxes. Vicky, with a serious expression, was sitting cross-legged on a table. Keep counting stacks of old cash bills. These are the criminal profits he is about to turn over. Even if one is missing, it will lead to fierce accountability from the gang leader. Therefore, the dedicated Vicky did not dare to neglect and always went into battle personally. Because there are too many interests involved, in order to prevent anyone from being tempted randomly. Vicky also didn't bring any manpower. Only 2 close confidants, who are brothers and sisters, are responsible for guarding the warehouse. Buzz buzz. At this moment, the phone in his jacket pocket vibrated. Vicky blinked her dry eyes a few times and took out her cell phone. After twisting his neck and trying to relax, Vicky glanced at the message and couldn't help but let out a weird laugh. I really miss that crazy and innocent youth. Vicky sighed. The message was from my cousin Sergey. There were no words in it either. There is only one large-scale photo of Sergey celebrating enthusiastically with naked beauties. Vicky smiled and took back the phone. After anyone's first sin, hormones that have nowhere to vent will always rush towards 2 things. Women and drugs, until the means of crime gradually become more proficient. The numb mood can no longer evoke any emotion. One day, Sergey will also understand this feeling. In an instant, Vicky frowned. He subconsciously picked up a submachine gun that was thrown on the table. The surrounding environment is not quite right. Moreover, it was too quiet in the warehouse. What about the cigarettes and conversations between confidants, and the sound of footsteps patrolling back and forth? Ivan, Nikolai. Vicky called softly, listening at the same time. However, when his call did not receive any answer. Click. Vicky pulled the bolt of the gun expressionlessly. At the same time, he quickly turned over the table and hid in the corner formed by several wooden boxes. At this moment, the light on the top of the warehouse is warm and bright. But drops of cold sweat gradually broke out on Vicky's forehead. Even the palm of the hand holding the gun handle was covered with sweat. Vicky was forced to wipe her palms repeatedly. Prevent the firearm from slipping and delaying important events. There was a moment of silence. Vicky swallowed and shouted to the extremely silent warehouse. Friend, if Ivan and Nikolai are still alive, please spare their lives. Both of them are men who come out to make a living and have families to take care of. Do you need any help? If I can solve it, I will definitely not refuse. The cash on the table, if you are not afraid of the gang's revenge, you can take it at will. If you think it is too little, there are 10 kilograms of drugs hidden in the black wooden box in the corner of the warehouse. The purity of the goods is not low, and it can be worth millions. For a moment, except for a faint echo, there was no sound in the warehouse. Vic was sure that the other party was definitely not a policeman. If it was not a professional killer sent by the hostile gang, then it must be those mysterious vigilantes. Bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, a round object the size of a basketball was thrown out from the narrow warehouse aisle. After countless flips and rolls, it rolled to Vic's feet. Just a subconscious glance. Vic's face changed suddenly. He couldn't help but close his eyes and squeezed out a trace of grief from between his teeth. Ivan. It was a human head. A bloody head with a familiar face. It was also a human head with both eyes pierced by thin iron nails. And at the tail of the iron nail that penetrated into the eye socket, there were actually several strips of toilet paper wrapped around it. At this moment, the blood-stained toilet paper was tightly pasted on the face of the human head. It was like a horror costume in Halloween. The absurdity was full of weirdness, and the fear was brewing in fear. Vic, who was breathing heavily, suddenly opened his blood-red eyes. He gritted his teeth and shouted loudly. I swear in the name of God. The sportswear gang will always hunt you down. And hunt down your family. Kill everything you care about most. Even if your family only has a dog. We will find it, chop it up, and send it to you in person. Wait for death. Bastard. Bang bang bang. Vic, who was furious, poked the muzzle of the gun from the edge of the wooden box. He pulled the trigger hard and fired aimlessly and crazily. Hot shells exploded on Vicky's face from time to time. He couldn't help but dodge. However, every time Vicky's eyes swept over the miserable head, the complex emotions of sadness and anger would once again make him lose his mind. Click. The submachine gun magazine was empty and made a sound of hanging up. Vicky gasped violently, and his fingertips trembled as he touched his waist. He planned to change the bullets. Whoosh! But at this moment, an iron nail with toilet paper wrapped around the tail silently shot out from the gap between two wooden boxes not far away. It was inserted into the back of Vicky's hand with great accuracy. Ah! Vicky screamed, and the gun suddenly fell from his wet palm. Before Vicky could react, more iron nails flew out like bullets. They were actually nailed to Vicky's face, piercing into the flesh and blood, 3 points into the bone.